This is Show and Tell, a podcast where we ask people to show us a little of themselves and tell us a lot about their businesses. Welcome to Show and Tell, our very first episode. Govan, Jegels, Ameen Kiefer. Obviously, you guys are quite well known to me. We know each other. We work together. Sometimes we do other recreational things together. It's a privilege to have you on the show. This being our very first episode as well. Thank you for coming. Here at Show and Tell, we ask our guests to show us a little of themselves and tell us a lot about their businesses. So, in line with that, we're gonna start. Amin, I'm gonna ask you if you've brought anything along with you that's dear to you. We ask all our guests this that can help give us a bit more insight into who you are and what you're about. And I think once we've spoken a little bit about you and we get to know you a bit better, we're going to talk a lot more about your businesses.
No, for sure, Shane. And first of all, thank you for having myself and Govan here. I think it's an honor to be on the first podcast. It's fantastic to be here. And I did bring something. I brought something quite strange, right? So I brought an avocado. I'll leave it there in the middle of the table. And, you know, don't be alarmed. I didn't bring it because I was worried that we're not going to get lunch later. No, I mean, an avocado in my world and in my business life specifically is quite a symbolic thing. It takes me back when I was a lot younger, probably around 10, 11 years old. Myself, my brother, we used to go to my uncle's place in a small little town called Groblersdal in Limpopo. We'd go there for holidays, go fishing, go camping. But one of the things we did there was he had a massive avocado tree in his yard. And, you know, we came up with this idea that we'll take some fishing rods, we'll climb into the tree and we'd go and pull these avocados off, put them in a crate, take the crate, go to, there was a shopping center there, it still is there. We set it up outside one of the big retail stores and we sold avocados. So our thinking was, wait, we can make a few bucks out of this.
Was this your start in sales?
This is my start in sales, Shane. My start in business, actually. So, that was the first time I actually took a product, took it to consumer and was able to sell it. And, I think that kind of guided me in my journey. At the time, obviously, I didn't think I'd go into business or anything like that. I was still pretty young. But selling that first crate of avocados, using that money, I think we bought paddle pops back in the day. So that was always nice. But it kind of gave me that little kickstart, gave you that confidence and that feeling that was like, hey, wait, I can actually do this. I can take something, I can sell it and make some money out of it. So that's kind of where it all started off for me. And, it's kind of landed up in me being here today and also on this podcast. But yeah, very, very, a story very dear to my heart, close to my heart, something that I share with only a few people. But that's it for me, yeah. And we'll definitely eat it later.
but it sounds like you've taken something that's quite personal to you, and it's become part of who you are in business today.
Definitely, that's exactly it, Shane. That's exactly it.
Okay, even though it's as simple as an avo.
It is. That's it. A lot of massive organizations were built around that. Taking something avos as well, I'm sure. Yeah, but taking something simple, getting it to where there's a demand for it, and that's kind of what sparks things. But I think we'll talk about business in the next few minutes. But yeah, that's my story, and that's what I brought today.
Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem, Shane.
Interesting story.
Govan, did you bring anything with you?
Of course I did. So what I brought today is something that's not quite a fruit, but still a commodity that's in the earth. But this is an interesting story. I've got a gold chain here that used to belong to my dad. And for those, my dad is still alive, great guy. He made this in 96. And the interesting story about this, back in the day in the suburbs or in the communities where I grew up, a gold chain was like a car, man. So in 96 he made this, so it's just shy of 30 years old. And when I was a teenager, I had a school function. And you wanted to be a cool kid, and I borrowed it from him in my teenage years, and I never gave it back to him. So I think he just accepted that it will always be mine. So it's quite interesting because it's been in my possession for over 20 years. And it's something that's quite dear to me. And, in your day-to-day life, you kind of realize the sentimental components of why you do certain things. And it's cool to have a light item to carry around with you to remind you of that. So, yeah, I carry this around me most days. Most days it's in a safe place. It also has a pendant on that my mom got for me. So I'm quite a sentimental character, focused on family and those kind of things. And it reminds me of why I do what I do and who I'm doing it for. So it was quite interesting. I know I thought of an item that could be interesting, but this is a dear part of me for most of my life. And it's still in my possession. So thanks to my dad, he made my mom a matching bracelet. I hope she still has it. I kept mine safe. But yeah, it's just that, a small motivating item. It was 600 Rand in 96 when he made it. I won't share the current value, but it's much more than that today. That's why I keep it in a safe place. But yeah, I carry it around and ensure that I touch it from time to time if I have a tough day. So it's just a sentimental component or item that reminds me. And it's also a commodity. And I'm in the commodity trade, so it kind of fits in with my personality. But yeah, it is. Don't swap your avocado for my chain now, please.
I'll try not to.
Given what's happened with the gold price in the last year, I'd probably guard that quite carefully.
Yeah, so that too.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting how commodity prices is something as simple 30 years ago has got a different value. It's still in the same shape and form. So I think that's why it's so interesting to me to carry it around.
Yeah. Now, Govan, you and I have the same surname.
We do.
Is that incidental or would you like to explain?
We do have the same surname, and we do share some bloodline. So you know that, for you that don't know, some of the other guys, Shane, my dad and Shane's dad, a late dad, is brothers. So that's Shane my first cousin. I think he met me when I was about 30 days old. I'm not sure.
Something like that.
Yeah. So you've seen me. You've seen me in all stages of my life. I had blonde hair. I had a little short bob. I looked like a little Dennis the Menace character. But yeah, I've known you my whole life. So it's quite interesting to sit here. I won't share my age, but decades later. Yeah. And be a guest on your show. So it's full circle in terms of all the things that has happened in life and where I am today. So it's quite an honor to be part of it.
I think a lot of people will wonder what it's like to work with family. Would you care to share a bit?
Yeah, no, I think in business or in entrepreneurship or in a corporate setting where you're working with family, whether it be in any setting, it's always interesting. But I think it comes down to the characters behind it. If you're in entrepreneurship, be sure that your family member that you're doing business with is an entrepreneur, because adversity comes about, personalities change when hard times come about. And I was fortunate enough to be guided by a cousin that could handle those things and that one could learn from. Whereas on the flip side, I know my brother and I had a small business growing up as well. Mm-hmm. And my brother's a lovely guy. He's a family man, he's a corporate citizen. He's a very cool guy. And he's not a businessman. I love him. And he knows it as well. We used to go to Jeffreys Bay, buy some Billabong t-shirts. And, if that perseverance and things isn't there, and looking at the Gulfstream story, and we'll get into the details of that, just where you could take a business, and it would be wonderful if you can do it with family. I think a lot of people do that. I think there's a lot of successful family businesses. But I think it boils down to the personality at the end of it, regardless if it's family or not.
Mr. Kiefer, I have a question that I've been wanting to ask you for some time, actually. You seem to be a born entrepreneur. You came in, you brought your Avo, you spoke about selling, you described a bit about how that's part of what you do. Why are you not in business for yourself? What are you doing working inside a company like Gulfstream Energy? And I'll describe a little bit later what you do at Gulfstream and what Govan does as well for the viewers.
Yeah. It's an interesting question, Shane.
Yeah.
I've had a few businesses of my own. So, over the years I've started a few things. Pretty much everything from selling avos to having night markets and, anything in between, a snacks and sweets business as well at some point. But what I learned pretty early on was, everybody wants the title of a CEO or something like that. And you go and build or start a company. You're like, okay, I'm going to buy and sell some stuff. But there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into that. When you're young, you start off, you don't really have contacts. You don't really know people. And everybody just jumps into that and takes the money they have and puts it in. And then you find, oh, this is not as easy as I thought. I actually don't know what to do here. And I think I found that in my early days in business, at least, where you find that you've got an idea, you've got you've got what it takes to do it, but you don't really know how business works. You don't really know any people or any connections. And, I think that's what you get from a business or from a corporate, right? So you get to understand how a proper business works from starts, from end to end. You get to build contacts, you build relationships, you build your network, right? And when I joined Gulfstream and why I've been here for quite some time is, you kind of get that entrepreneurship or that entrepreneurial feeling, but you're in a pretty big company, right? So, that gives you that full end-to-end experience. It gives you the ability, and, with the role that I'm in now as well, it gives you that flexibility and freedom to almost run the business like your own. And, that's something I really, really like, and I enjoy that. And I think there's a lot of learnings that come out of that, Shane. I think it's a lot of learnings to take into my career later on in life. I'm still pretty young, I like to think. but that's kind of it, Shane. So, it's being with Gulfstream gives you that entrepreneurial experience or that entrepreneurial feel, combined with the, almost a somewhat corporate structure that I think is valuable.
So together, we all work in a company called Gulfstream Energy. We're a petroleum wholesaler. We buy and sell fuel, amongst other things. Govan, you, the Chief Operating Officer of our bulk business. So obviously a really senior role in the company. Amin, you, the Chief Operating Officer of what we refer to as our power on business. And I'm your boss.
Yeah.
What is the experience? You're both relatively young, but I think you're both also very experienced. You've both been in the petroleum industry and in business for some time now. You've recently been appointed as the Chief Operating Officer of the bulk business. What has the experience been like for you so far?
I'm fortunate enough to have seen a lot of insights into the business. So I think with that experience and the recent experience, to your question, it's been exciting, to deliver results and to motivate a team of people, highly skilled, very ambitious, young, old alike. I like the mix because us younger folk would see the opportunity where perhaps some other key figures in the business would steer us and be like, watch out for this because of experience. And a lot of the times, you need the right mix of that. You can't be too conservative, and you can't be too optimistic on the other side. So coming back, more experience of being appointed recently, it's been a different journey, but an exciting one, just merely because of the results that we can deliver in a climate that is perhaps not easy to do so. I think Gulfstream is one of the biggest or the most, I call it, intangible asset valued company. If I say intangible assets in terms of reputation, doing things the right way and all of that. So the experience of leading a business like that it must be exciting. Certainly you put a lot of pressure on yourself because you want to deliver and you drive the business in the right way and motivate those around you. But it's exciting, to be in a position like that. I think you're very blessed and fortunate to experience that I would still refer to myself as a young man. But it comes with its pressures, but it's been so exciting. It's you test your ability, you test the ability of what resources you have to your disposal and the people around you. So it's a wonderful experience. It certainly comes with difficult days. But if you sit back and you think about it, you'd be like, wow, it's incredible to be part of something like this.
Now, I mean, you a bit younger than Govan. I don't know if it's obvious, but you are a bit younger. What does it mean to you to be the Chief Operating Officer of such an important part of Gulfstream's business? I think maybe also just explain what that means to be a Chief Operating Officer, because people may not know.
Yeah, of course, Shane. If you'd let me, I think I'd maybe just want to talk about the story of Power On and how that came about,
Please.
Right? Because I think that's an interesting one, and it kind of led us to this point now with me being the Chief Operating Officer of it. So, okay, it's an interesting story, right? So I mean, let's rewind a few years. COVID comes about, right? The fuel industry, as we know it, kind of dies down or gets a lot slower, and it gives you time to think about some things. So, one of the things that came, and I'll never forget this. Shane walked into the office one day, and he says, "Let's buy a bakkie and let's buy a trailer and let's deliver small quantities of fuel." And when you're used to selling thousands and thousands or millions of liters of fuel, somebody coming and saying, "Okay, let's take 1,000-liter trailer or 2,000-liter trailer, pull it with a bakkie and go deliver some diesel," sounds a little crazy. So, we then said, "Okay, well, maybe there's a market for this. Let's give it a shot." We bought a trailer, we bought a bakkie, we branded it. It looked really nice. We picked up some fuel, and I think, Shane, you got the first customer. We delivered some fuel to a generator manufacturer in our business park. So that's kind of where it started. But then the bakkie and trailer kind of stood in the warehouse, and we looked at this thing and we were like, we should probably do something.
Remember that.
We should probably do something with this, right? So as lockdown eased off a little bit, load shedding started to creep its way into our daily existence, and businesses were finding it more and more difficult to source enough fuel or source fuel correctly. The traditional way was take a 20-liter bucket, go to a service station, fill up some diesel, cart it back. But when you're in load shedding and you have to do that a few times a day, it becomes a problem. But long story short, what we did was, there was myself and a guy called Jody. We decided the one day that it's a good idea to get in the bakkie and go from company to company in our corporate park. And the pitch was simple, right? So we went there, knocked on the door, went in, saw the person that's responsible for the generator, and basically said to them that we'd be able to supply and deliver fuel to them cheaper than what they could buy it for at the service station. So that was the selling point.
Just say that again.
We would deliver diesel, quality diesel,
right,
directly into their generator.
Okay.
For cheaper than what they could buy it for at the service station.
Selling to a company, right?
To a company.
Okay.
To a company, of course. Yeah. So that was the sales pitch, right?
Yeah.
So most of these guys needed 2,000-3,000 liters of diesel, and it worked, right? So we went to the first one. We were like, "Hey guys, we've got some fuel." And they were like, "Okay, when can you deliver?" Now, they didn't know that myself and Jody were walking around, but the bakkie was 100 meters behind us. So we're like, "You know what? We're actually in the area right now.
No.
We can come and deliver." And that caught on. And from a bakkie that was standing in the warehouse with the trailer, that quickly grew to 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 liters. But I think the big break in that business also came from a walk-in. So again, it seemed our tactic was working, walking from company to company. And we walked into one of the big retailers in a place called Cosmo City. And same pitch, we can deliver diesel. We can deliver it directly to your generator. And it just so happened that one of the facilities managers for the group was doing a store visit at that store at that time.
Okay.
And
you walked into the mall.
We walked into the mall, into one of the retail stores.
Was that part of some kind of strategy, or were you just there?
Shane, it seemed to have been working in the corporate park where you just walk into
Okay, so you targeted the mall.
So we targeted the mall. We decided, okay, it's a good idea. Let's go there. There's a lot of generators. You could almost hear it like bees. They were just like humming everywhere. So we walked into this place. We found this lady. She was very receptive to us.
Okay.
And she said, "You know what? We've actually got a bit of a challenge with this, but more on a regional level." So regional is the key. So we're like, okay, regional, Johannesburg. We've got a bakkie and trailer. We can do it, right? So ultimately we sent her a proposal, and she's like, "You know what? You guys can do all of our stores in the Gauteng region." Okay. So that's where it started. So anyways, we got going. Orders came in one after the other, and that's kind of how it grew. So that was the first big customer. Pretty much a regional footprint, which then became a national footprint. And that necessitated us growing that business. Myself and Jody, still the people in the forefront kind of selling this offer, which was a small subset of the Gulfstream business at the time. It was a very small component of what we were doing. But it was something that we saw crazy potential in. I think load shedding was really just ramping up at the point. And we then went from that retailer to another retailer and another one. And the reception was pretty much the same. Guys, can you service us on a national basis? we said yes. Of course we said yes. And, when those things came in, I still remember that. We took on a contract of 400 stores, I think. And 2 days later, stage 6 load shedding hit us. And, 5 buckies, 400 stores, the maths doesn't maths. So we had to scale that crazy, or like crazy. But in essence, Shane, what then happened was from there that grew. And, we started servicing banks and retail and medical facilities and government facilities.
And now you were managing hundreds of orders a day.
Hundreds of orders a day. We were doing it on WhatsApp mainly. So
I had a rumor you were taking orders in your sleep.
I was taking orders in my sleep, dispatching drivers in my sleep, probably pricing in my sleep as well. So yeah, it consumed a lot of everybody that was in that. There was a guy called Mango as well. That was his nickname. He was instrumental in that. But ultimately that led to a place where we had a national footprint, servicing probably the biggest names in South Africa, and almost being one of the most vital suppliers to their value chain, or to their their infrastructure. So that was interesting, and we used that platform then to build apps to manage this. We built an app that managed all the transactions on in a real time basis, instant invoicing, dispatching, that sort of stuff. But that then became a structured business, and ultimately I became the head of sales there. And later on, as the offer developed and as things changed, now I landed up being the chief operating officer of that business, which now is not only diesel. There's diesel, we do gas, we do on-road refueling, we do marine refueling. So
just before you describe the additional offers, can you sort of just summarize what Power On is and how it uses technology?
So Shane, I think there's many ways to describe it, but in essence, it's the delivery of a specialized product through technology. So that's kind of what you could summarize it as. So whether it's diesel or gas or on-road refueling or marine refueling, it's using technology to enable customers to access a specialized product and access it quickly. So that's pretty much a summary of that. To answer your question though, on what it means to be the chief operating officer of that side of the business. Sorry, that is a bit of a...
By the way, I'm quite glad you understand your portfolio. It's important
thank you,
to me.
I think that's important. Yeah, I think, it's obviously to lead a team of people that I saw come up and grow under this offering is it's rewarding. A lot of young people, so very young people. A lot of people, it was their first job when they came out of school, out of varsity. So being able to lead that and lead it with the flavor that, that's still innovative, that's still growth focused. And, we almost have that attitude that we could take over the world. Yeah. And to be able to lead that and to be in charge of that is rewarding. And, it's an honor to do that. I think there's a lot to do. There's a lot of change. I think scaling a business is one thing. Building a business from scratch or building business units from scratch in an industry where not many people were doing that is something else. But it's definitely a rewarding place to be right now.
Now, a couple of years ago, I remember our offices in Lanseria becoming packed with people, in support of the Power On growth. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened there and how we then had to move out of the Lanseria building, or some people moved out, and then established the entire new digital operations center, and what that was like?
Sure. So as I said, the business grew quickly. Yeah. It grew quickly. So it grew from a few transactions a day to hundreds of transactions a day to thousands of transactions a month. And in the beginning stages, or in the initial stages, it was manual. So it was manual delivery notes, it was manual orders, manual dispatching. And with that came a crazy amount of work, a crazy amount of people. But, I think at some stage we serviced a few thousand generators, or we looked after a few thousand generators. And it wasn't, I need one delivery to one generator. It was like, I need 500 deliveries to 500 locations. And with that came feedback both ways, to customers, from customers, to drivers. And that necessitated, there was a need for people. So we grew quite quickly. We grew out of our space that we had in the office. we got a little office in the warehouse, which then became the Power On office. It was one of those site offices that we put a sticker on the door that said this is the Power On HQ. But from that, we moved into what we call the Digital Operations Center.
Okay.
That's located here in Waterfall. But that then became a 24/7, 365 digital operation that housed all the apps, housed the people that worked on it, but basically created a center, I think a first of its kind center that's solely focused on executing or delivering on our commitments to our customers. And that's what we still run here today.
It now also houses our podcast studio.
It does. Yeah, it houses our podcast studio, and I'm sure a few other things in future as well.
Sounds like it was fun, a little bit crazy.
It was. Yeah.
And we know, though, that when we got to March last year, things suddenly changed.
Yep.
But I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later.
No problem.
I want to ask Govan, though, about what his journey was like, or has been like, growing up in the bulk business mostly. I know you've had some experience on the power on side as well, on the ground. But what has that been like for you, the journey from when you started at Gulfstream to, having risen, if I can put it that way, to Chief Operating Officer of the bulk business today?
Sure. It's quite a story. I'll save you some of the details, but somebody dear to me came to visit me and they're like, listen, I've got a job for you. You need to deal with some complex characters in our retail sector in the business. And I took him up on the offer. He took me on a trip. And I kind of understood what was happening. It's buying and selling commodity, diesel, petrol, illuminated paraffin, jet fuel. And
This is the bulk business now with big bulk deliveries.
Indeed.
To big customers, right?
Indeed. So it's slightly different, or a lot different from
You're not supplying 1,500 liters to generators.
Additionally 39 to 40,000 liters at a time to retail service stations, to commercial customers, public sector customers, and we've got some other smaller wholesalers or like-for-like wholesalers that buys from us that depend on our oil company or supply network to access their businesses. So it was interesting to understand it. I looked at this thing and I'm like, okay, I came from Cape Town to Johannesburg, daunting. But I like change, and I like to challenge myself. And I came and I started answering the phones to understand. I think that's what I wanted to do, just to understand how order comes into the system, because I think my understanding of it, knowing the ownership and then the leadership of the business, you get there and you're like, wow, these folk are from, interesting backgrounds. And they're sitting with this massive business. Here's this building in Lanseria. You're not operating in a back room somewhere. This is a serious business. So you need to understand. So I started answering the phones before I went into my role as a retail account manager, and understanding the process. There was the system, the company had invested already in some technology and some processes and things. And it's been I think its existence was only about 5 years old or 6 years old when I initially stepped in. But it was wonderful to see the scale, and I'm like, okay, this is not. It had sectors, it had people, there was phones ringing, there was a nice area, a communal area for the employees. So I'm like, okay, I didn't expect it to that scale. Obviously, I did some research, but firstly, I was overwhelmed, and I was overwhelmed, and I was proud that the people that I knew achieved this. So I want to be a part of it. I could back that. So started answering the phones. Went to the logistics department to understand how you get fuel from a gantry to a customer safely. And then I stepped into my role. And then I started meeting some of the customers. And that kind of hooked me. Engaging with people, understanding their businesses, what they face, what wins and losses they have. You start getting friends in this retail portfolio. It's a husband and wife pair that's running this site in Boysons versus a wonderful guy that has got a cluster of sites, that is a business guy that wants things done in a certain way. So it molds your personality to understand how to gauge all of these different personalities that you are having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I found a little hack in terms of how to do that. And I grew into the commercial sector. Then I went into the sourcing, like actually being a customer. That was the most fun part. because having to jump at customers, and we love doing that as a business, solving a customer's issue, and then being the customer to buy the fuel afterwards in the business. That was quite interesting. So then I went to suppliers, understanding, okay, listen, we want X amount, so many millions of liters, and it's big scale. You're not talking about small stuff. So there was a lot of responsibility placed on me at the time. And I think the most exciting thing about it was like, hey, somebody believes that I can do this, so I want to give it the best shot I possibly can, and that kind of motivates you. And then I jumped into the ranks. I started leading people in the organization, so I had to adapt my personality to be a bit more calm and understand and, teach people, because somebody took the time to teach me, so you start maturing in that sense. And at the back of all of this, you've got a lot of transactions happening. If you're taking a load of fuel, it's almost R1 million, and you're moving it across the country, and you need to do so safely. So you've got a resource in a vehicle and a bulk vehicle operator. You've got a whole lot of variables to get it there safely. And you do that multiple times a day, a month. There's millions of liters that flow through, and you are responsible for that. On the sourcing side, getting it to your customer, and making sure that the process is followed. Because if you don't follow if you miss a beat in that process, you compromise and that's the business. So once you start understanding that and it becomes second nature, I think only then you're comfortable to step into a position like that where you're like, okay, the company, the people of this business, the shareholders, both local and multinational shareholdership that we have in the business, trust you to do this. So it's a journey, and it's been 10 years. I can't believe it. I'm grey now. I remember stepping in there as a young chap, and 10 years has passed, and it's you've got that natural rhythm and understanding on how to do this, and you back yourself and you back the people to achieve that. So it takes a lot of motivating yourself and all of that. And I think, it's a wonderful experience to be in that position and to see those coming up the ranks the way I did. So I think that's the most special part of all of it.
Now, as a fuel wholesaler, Govan, Gulfstream obviously supplies a number of different sectors in the South African economy. Would you tell us a bit more about those sectors, and also tell us if there are any particular sectors that you enjoy looking after?
So in our bulk business, we've got quite a few sectors, all of them which I love, some more than others. Essentially, we've got the retail service station network. We call that the retail sector, where we've got business owners that operate retail sites, and we then service their fuel requirements, taking it from a major oil company depot to their forecourts, which they then on-sell. There's the commercial sector, which is traditionally big transport companies, commercial transport that have big fleets. There's construction that sits in there. There's a variety of customers, but essentially commercial fuel for home-based depots. Home-based depots referring to a location where a company has installed their own infrastructure for economic reasons and for business continuity and for flow. That we supply into, so they're quite reliant on us delivering there. And then we've got something called truck ports as well, which we've stripped out from the conventional retail service station business, because that's higher volumes. They're servicing truck networks for on-road refueling. There's the public sector as well, that we service in there. And then we got the COC portfolio, which is quite an interesting one, which I also enjoy.
Tell us a bit more. Why are you smiling?
Yeah, look, there's some stories I can't share on camera. But my customer base here are business owners themselves, and they own a like-for-like type of Gulfstream company where they've got a customer base, and they've got...
So they buy and sell as well?
They buy and sell as well. But interesting characters. All of them are so different, I can tell you thousands of stories about them, but that's where, you go and have a Brandewyn and Coke with a business owner in the Tabazimbi area.
As you Afrikaans?
Nee, kyk hoor. Afrikaans is my eerste taal.
Because a lot of those guys are Afrikaans speaking, right? Afrikaans
speaking, characters, abrupt characters, lovely characters, loving people. But, they're serious about their business, and, it's a guy that will grab you around your neck if if you disappoint him, or he'll give you a call to check up on you and how your family is, and essentially more informal type of relationship because it's not in a corporate setting.
No, I mean, you both have spent time in probably all Gulfstream sectors, doing various jobs at different times over the years. But you've also looked after the COC portfolio for a while. Is that right or not? You certainly had some experience with COC customers.
I've had quite a bit of experience with COC customers, and as Govan says there, it's something different every day.
COC stands for
Customer-owned collection.
Yeah.
Customer-owned collection. So these are customers that pick up fuel themselves
with their own
fleet or with third-party
vehicles, yes.
transporters.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
You were saying?
we've had some interesting experiences there. But I think across all of the sectors, as you said, there's customers there that they've got very unique personalities. But the relationships we've been able to build were more family than anything else. And, you get a call in the morning and you're asking about Afrikaans, and one of your customers is just like, Amin, we like amens. I'm like, wait, what? How do I look?
How's your Afrikaans, by the way?
It's not bad, right? I can understand perfectly fine. Speaking, the accent is slightly off, but it's that sort of thing. 7 o'clock in the morning, you get a call from a customer just asking you how you're doing and try to figure out what's.
So how do you answer who like amens?
Yeah, so
what did you say?
So Govin's come to tell me you just say "Nee, goeden jy." So that's kind of the comeback there. But it's it's an unreal position to be where you're doing business with a group of friends almost. So it's the customers have really become part of what we do and part of us. And I think likewise with us and them. But I heard something once, and it said when your name becomes a solution, that's when you've made it, or when you're doing well, right? So when your name becomes a solution. And I think that's what what we start to get right. So when the customer thinks about something,
Gulfstream can solve this or help me solve it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it's become. And as Govan said, it's I think it's flowed over into some of their personal lives as well, which is cool. It's it's really something different.
Now it sounds like things have always been going really well, but I know business owners are particularly difficult characters. Surely you've had moments where things didn't go so well, and where they didn't necessarily look at you as a solution, but the problem.
For sure.
Yes,
indeed.
Would you like to share?
I remember, sure. In sales and in managing, I think one interesting story. I went after this customer. I was quite excited about it. I was a young sales guy. And he chased me away from his forecourt. But he loves me today. And, be clear that when you disappoint him, he's not going to be an easy character to deal with.
Because this is existing Gulfstream customer.
This is existing Gulfstream customer.
You can tell me who he is afterwards.
I'm sure you'll pick up on it.
But what happened? Tell us.
Yeah, so, it took me quite a while to get this customer. So I'd fly to Cape Town from Johannesburg, and I'll ask him, I'll go to his forecourt because we're looking for a very specific retail customer. And I asked him, and he'd had this personality where he wouldn't engage people quite easily. And eventually, the one day when he gave me an opportunity to supply, told me listen, first you don't mess me around, and he was very clear on the prenuptials before we started purchasing from us. And then one day we disappointed him. There was variables that was against us. We failed to update him up in time, and you're learning, and he found.
Yeah,
and it was like, you're not serious. You're losing my business today. So you jump towards that, and there's many stories like that with when things don't go your way operationally, where customers don't take lightly to it because their business continuity needs to carry on, and they're not always taking that easily. You would perhaps have thousands.
Yeah, listen. I mean, we have a business that has a lot of moving parts.
Yeah,
right. A lot has to go right for a customer to get the delivery on time. So things can go wrong sometimes. Now, you guys have had more experience, I think, than anybody else in the organization with having to deal with a situation where things go wrong. So, how do you deal with an angry customer? What do you do if, right from the offset, the guy shouting at you on the phone or swearing at you on the phone?
Yeah.
It must have happened.
No, it
must have happened.
It definitely
I mean,
happened,
we're good, but I don't think we're that good.
We're not that good. We like to think that we're that good, but it does happen from time to time. There's a couple things, So there's certain techniques you could use, obviously, that we've been trained on, and I think maybe Govan will give us a bit more about that.
I can role play this with you if you like.
We'll see how that goes. but Shane, I think an important thing is just listen, right? So just listen.
Okay.
Let them let people vent their frustrations. A lot of the time, they'll tell you exactly what the issue is. So they'll tell you, listen, I'm not happy because of X, Y, and Z, and that seems to work for me. But Govan, do you want to maybe give us a little role play on?
Let me ask you how you'd respond, because the one that gets me, and I've had it a few times, is when I answer the phone and there's no introduction. The guy just says, "Waar's my fucking aflewer?" And I was busy thinking about something else. And it takes me I don't know who I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
I know it's related to the business. I know the delivery is late, but I don't know. It takes me a while to figure out how to, because your natural response is to try and respond, right?
Yeah.
So how would you deal with a situation like that? If Amin was the customer and he phoned you and he said, "Waar's my fucking aflewering?" What do you do?
Amin. Kan nie wees nie. Wag. Kom ek verstaan net gou, wat is die probleem? Because I think it's important to understand the issue.
Yeah.
You said we need to listen.
You need to listen. So customer will vent and they'll.
But what's the benefit of that, though?
I think the firstly is to diffuse the situation, because you've got a common goal there to get fuel to a location as quickly as possible. Now there's various ways, and again, even if the customer perhaps forgot to place their order, they now got an emergency, you make a commitment and the commitment is slightly delayed. But first response is understanding the customer's problem and listening to them, making sure that you give them all you're clear that you're taking this thing on personally and you're not resting until you're resolving the issue, and you're updating them post the fact. But first things first, listen to understand, not listen to respond. Because some customers can be a bit more animated, perhaps a bit more rude when things don't go accordingly. So that's first things first, I think.
But it's difficult to try and keep yourself in that, or keep your cool in that sort of situation, and think about the right thing, Shane. I've actually got a funny story when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Funny now, not funny at the time.
Those are the best.
Yeah, what happened was, on the power on side of things, we obviously serviced a lot of retail stores, a lot of which had fridges and cold rooms and those sort of things. And I'll never forget, I got a call from one of the store managers, and it basically went, "If we don't get diesel now, you can come and fetch everything in these fridges." And in my mind, I'm like, I don't think I can fit that in all the buckets. But that is obviously the wrong thing to think about at that time. Yeah. But in a situation like that, as Govan says, understand, okay, customers under real pressure, there's a problem here. What do we do? And, then only respond and say, okay, I'm gonna move some stuff around. I'm gonna see what I can do to get to you, to service the need. We've made a commitment to a customer to get there at a certain time potentially, or to render a service to a certain level. And, understand, then respond, but listen to understand before responding. So I think that's the most important part in the beginning.
So the customer feels heard.
Customer feels heard. They feel like you're understanding their pain.
See, my experience is if the customer doesn't feel heard and you start talking, you are going to create a bigger problem.
Most definitely.
They've got to feel like, and the reason they need to feel heard is because I think it's important in the situation of business with, not delivering, for example, on time. It'd be a massive operational problem for a customer.
Yep.
If they don't feel heard, they don't feel like you care. And the moment the customer doesn't feel like you care, you're starting to threaten the relationship.
Definitely.
Does that?
That's spot on.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's spot on. Definitely. If a customer even senses that you don't care, that's when you're in trouble.
And you have to genuinely care.
You have to.
You can't fake that.
I think that's one of Gulfstream's, it's been one of Gulfstream's, I'd say, best characteristics, that we have people in the organization that genuinely care about not just delivering to customers, but care about customer businesses. You must genuinely care. You were saying you can't fake it.
You cannot.
They'll sense that you're faking.
Yeah, you cannot. And you need to be plugged in all the time.
Yeah.
And you need to love that as well, that part of it. I think if you don't love that part of it, you'll struggle in an organization of sorts. Because a customer will tell you, it's like your dad shouting you for doing something incorrect, and you need to be okay to accept that in that time, or to accept that, listen, you've done something here, and you need to fix that. So you need to give that customer the line. We can't take it the wrong way because you've got that family relationship, so you can't fake something like that.
A lot of the time, Shane, the people or the customers are angry at the situation, not at the person. And as Govan said,
You can't take it personally.
You can't take it personally. I've seen a lot of it where, and I mean, I've seen it with myself. It hurts. Somebody screaming or shouting or not happy. It hurts you. And, your instant reaction is to try and fight back or to counter that. But a lot of the times it's the situation that's the issue, not the person. And I think you have to understand that. You have to be okay with that, and you need to deal with the situation at the time. And,
so
that's interesting.
When you're recruiting people, are you looking for this type of characteristic in them, where they could genuinely care about customer businesses? And is it only some people in sales, or are you looking for it in everyone that you're thinking about hiring?
My expectation is that everybody has it.
Okay.
That's my expectation with my team. Whether it be a finance-related invoice query, whether it be deploying a tank somewhere in a remote area, whether it's a delivery, whether it's just a catch-up from the sales guys and managing that relationship. And my expectation that everybody has that, and I think that is driven us on both the bulk and the power on side to be successful and box in very serious rings. Because if somebody on the other side in another organization doesn't care, that customer starts losing faith and they end up at your doorstep in UK, and that buys you some emotional credits, as we call it.
Yeah. On the power on side, it's an interesting one in that question, Shane. What sort of person do you hire? As I said, we've got a very young team at Power On, so not much experience. A lot of the team just comes out of school, and in my view, I almost hire solely on attitude and the way they're willing to show up, and the way they're willing to treat customers, and the way that they're willing to do certain things, and that's purely because we're trying to grow something here that hasn't really been done in the past.
Yeah.
And the attitude is, in my view, is more important than the skill set. The skill set can be taught. That's for sure. But if the attitude's wrong, I think you're stuck right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we've seen some of the superstars in this team are not people that have degrees and all sorts of stuff, or have master's degrees or anything like that. It's people that have got the right attitude. That we can conquer anything attitude. Customers are the most important thing in our business. That's what you look for. You get that right, I think you can sort the rest out, or you can train the rest as you go along.
Couldn't agree more.
Attitude, competence,
Yep.
integrity.
Integrity, that's it.
Where do you start?
Integrity, attitude, competence. That's my order.
I can't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Can't disagree with you. Attitude and integrity is obviously right up there. But attitude gets you to a collective to move and get behind the common goal. If you got...
No, I agree. And I think if you have somebody in the organization that doesn't have integrity, it's better for them to be incompetent than competent. Because I think the combination between not having integrity and being super competent is really problematic in an organization.
That too.
Yeah.
You want incompetence if somebody doesn't have integrity. Yeah.
But in terms of just mobilizing the individuals, some days people are also engaging with their personal issues. So you must have a personal relationship with your team as well, so that they can understand and you can understand.
Where do you draw the line?
Because
Because we work with human beings, and
Indeed.
like you said, human beings have issues.
yeah,
But where do you draw the line? Because we're also running a business here.
I think if you experienced enough, you'll feel like a person is taking advantage of a situation, because your instinct is, when somebody is facing a difficult time in their lives, that you want to support them, because this is your colleague. This becomes like family to you. They're going through a difficult time. They perhaps lost a loved one, or they've got some adversity in their life, in their personal things that they find themselves doing. But an individual finds home in a place like Gulfstream. So you'd want to be there, So if you're taking advantage of time off that the business is extending to you and those kind of things, you start getting an instinct for it. because you so many different personalities. So somebody would try and take a shortcut and say, Amin got away with this, so I can do this. So if your attitude is right, you'd give that runway for the individual to go and deal with their personal situation. But I think where you draw the line is to get involved in that personal situation. It's not for you to resolve. I think all of us face different things to learn from life. And sometimes it's not up to us to resolve the situation, but giving them the time off and supporting them to get their work done while they're out of office, I think that is where you draw the line. But to get in and try and fight their battles with them sometimes can be difficult. And sometimes individuals might have that expectation, but I think when you're in a business and you're having that, you need to find a mechanism to draw the line because, I've
heard you say people must leave their bags at the door.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, no, it's all of us have personal situations, right? Difficult ones.
Yeah. And
you must come in and give every day your best shot if you're representing a business, regardless of what's happening. And, all of us want to save the world. I'm one of those individuals. I want to save the world, but you must have the ability to leave your bags at the door when you step in and be like, listen, today we need to sell X amount of fuel. We need to get to customers safely. Put on your game face. It's like going on a football field if you're a football fan. You need to leave whatever you need to leave in the locker room. You need to step out there and you've got a common goal of winning. And you can pick up your bag when you leave the door, your metaphorical bag of whatever you're facing in your personal life. Because everybody, let's face it, everybody face something. But you must have the ability to disconnect from that and do what you have to when you step into the organization.
Are you aligned?
I think so. To a large extent, we're here on a mission. Yeah. We're here to achieve something. We all have problems. We all have issues that we need to deal with. And I think there's a place for personal life. I think there's a place for work. When you're here, you work. I think the expectation is that we're here to achieve things to better all of our lives ultimately. So, where Govan says leave your bags at the door, sure, you can have issues. I think that's natural. And I think we also have to support one another. But if we're here to work and we're here to achieve something, we have to achieve it. That's the view.
We spoke about customer care or about caring or listening to customers earlier. I don't know if I shared this with you guys previously, but that was the foundation on which this business was actually built back when we established it in 2009. So you guys know I worked for corporate oil for basically 20 years before, we started Gulfstream Energy. And I think one of the main reasons for starting the business was my sense that over time, the bigger corporates weren't taking customer needs and requirements as seriously as I would have liked. And I got quite frustrated working for those organizations because I was trying to demonstrate care, look after the customer, understand what the customer needs, but I didn't see that those big companies were orientating themselves around the needs of the customers. And I thought, well, if you can create a sort of niche player that potentially buys fuel from the oil majors, and if they buy enough, they will be able to get a really good price. So they'll be able to compete on price, but then genuinely cares about the needs of the customer and shows up and visits customers, even if they're in remote areas. Because I saw that time and time again, customers in areas that are outside the core areas of South Africa not getting visited or only sometimes seeing a sales rep once a year or whatever the case may be. I just thought if we could establish something like that it would be meaningful and customers would take to that. As long as you could still be competitive on price, but really fast to react and genuinely caring for customer needs. And so we started Gulfstream like that. And we were quite fortunate because I think the market did take to it and the company grew quite fast. But what happened is, over time, we needed people to support the growth and to support looking after customer needs. And it then became quite important to understand this dynamic about the type of person you bring on board and also so the nature of the individual, but also their sort of customer care orientation. But then also understanding, and I came to understand something very, very clearly. There is no way that somebody, if you don't look after somebody inside the business of Gulfstream, that you can expect them to look after and care about customer needs. The one precedes the other. But there is a line that you have to draw.
Yeah.
Because it's not we're not a social service, we're a business. But you do have to look after the needs of people to the extent that they are happy enough or solid enough to be able to care about customer needs. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Most definitely. You know, Shane, I think that's an interesting topic that I've always wondered about. You know, why did you start the business? And I think you've said that now. But, you know, you started the business and then the business grew pretty quickly. And, you know, I think it went from zero to having a turnover in excess of R1 billion quite quickly. You know, what were the step-by-step what was the step-by-step progress or process that you used? Was there a process?
No.
Did we just wing it? how did we land up?
I'm going to disappoint you. I had no strategic plan or written down or anything of the sort.
Yeah.
You know what I did before we started Gulfstream? I phoned all the oil majors.
Okay.
As though I was a customer.
Yeah.
And I asked them, I said, listen, I'd like to buy 200,000 liters of diesel a month. Now, it's not a huge number, but it's not a small number. So even if you're an oil major, you'll be interested in that kind of volume. 200,000 a month. Even today, oil company will be interested in that kind. Yeah. Interested enough.
Yeah.
Right? I phoned every oil major and to see what the response would be. And you know what happened?
Was there no response?
In most cases, they didn't answer the phone.
Wow.
Where they did answer the phone, they transferred me to the wrong person who subsequently put the phone down. And in one case, I won't say who it is, in one case, they took a message and said they'd get somebody to phone me back. They didn't phone me back. Not one was able to respond in a way that, if I was a customer, I would have been interested. In fact, I didn't get a response, as I mentioned. And when that happened, I thought, wait, we can do a lot better than that. Yeah. Because I think we're a lot more responsive than that today, certainly. But we definitely were back then. So that encouraged me to set up a business, apply, get a wholesale license, and just really get going in the market. And the reason we grew is because customers chose to buy from us. It's as simple as that. And we grew into a multi-billion rand a year turnover business very quickly on the back of that. And as we grew, it told me we must be doing the right thing. Definitely. Something must be working.
Must be doing something right.
Something must be working because the customers are responding to us. But there was no strategic plan that we wrote down or followed or step by step. Our guide was really to say, how can we orientate ourselves around the needs of the customers and be attractive to the market? And we did as many things as we could in the time that we had to position ourselves like that. Why
how do you control that? You know, I mean,
it was hard.
You know, how do you control that? You had massive growth, and again, you're going up against multinationals, internationally owned organizations that have infrastructure, that have perhaps top selected people from all over the world running these major oil companies, and you go up against that. It's like, you know, I'm not a keen golf. I can play a little golf, but it's like me going up against Tiger Woods at Augusta or wherever it might be in one of the top courses in the world. And I'm finding myself with my clubs and not knowing what I'm doing, or I'm not saying and winning. You know.
Look, how do you control it? When you have a business like ours where you have high turnovers and really low margins, control is absolutely key. Because you can, if you mentioned it earlier, a load of fuel I think now is worth about 800,000 rand. Something like that, 40,000 liters of fuel at 20 rand a liter, give or take. It's probably worth about 800,000 rand. Your margin on that is wafer thin. People don't believe, like my mom doesn't believe how small the margins are. She just wants to hear the turnovers. She doesn't believe how small the margins are. And if you don't control the costs, you don't control the transactions, you can land up in trouble very, very quickly. So how is a long story, but I think you guys understand it better than most. I think what's important to say is that it's absolutely critical when you have low margins, that your controls are good. And the best way to do it is by doing the basics right. You've got to do the basics right. You got to take an order from a customer, look after that order as though it's gold. Schedule that order, make sure it gets delivered in line with the customer requirements. Get the paperwork back, check everything related to the trip. Make sure that you can use the paperwork to generate the invoice, and then make sure the customer pays. Even better if you get the customers to pay in advance. We were very fortunate because when we started this business with no money.
Nothing at all.
No money.
Wow.
Yeah. I basically started the business with my third child, newborn baby.
Yeah.
And I was like, we better make this thing work because we have a situation on hands. But we started the business with no money. Yeah. And the way that we were able to get started is and I say to people, be very careful even when you work for corporates, make sure you look after your reputation and your credibility. Because when I stepped out of corporate, I had to go back to some of those oil majors and ask them to supply us. And, then they look at you a little bit differently.
Yep.
The invisible stripes that you had on your shoulders, because maybe you had some rank there, they're gone.
Yeah.
You know who your friends are when you leave a big corporate because all you have to do is phone them and see how quickly they either answer or get back to you. Some guys just don't phone back. And you wondered.
Yeah.
But when those guys needed you, when you had rank in a corporate, they were all over you.
Yeah.
So you get to learn things like that I didn't know before. But what was I saying? I think you get to know who your friends are, but you must look after your reputation and your credibility because you may need to engage with those guys, to get your business started afterwards. So we with the credibility, the point I was trying to make is with the credibility that we had, we were able to get customers to pay us in advance for fuel. So the 800,000 was less than. It's probably 400,000. But to get somebody to give you 400,000 and in the hope that they're going to receive fuel, my family members, maybe excluding Govan, but family members won't give you that money.
Not a chance. Yeah.
Right? They won't. But we needed to do that in order to start Gulfstream. So, and that was on the back. So that was on the back of many, many years of work that preceded the creation of the company. Anyway.
So in the first order, how did that go? I mean, you said you got some money in advance. So I mean, how did that even come about?
It's quite a story that I can't share the whole story now. I think one of the key parts to that is a lot went wrong on the order, to the point that the customer at some point was not convinced that they were going to get the fuel. But prior to that, they had to pay in advance. They had to pay up front. And it was our very first customer, our very first order. And they went into the bank to pay cash because it was a service station that was buying fuel from us. Okay. It was the retailer, the service station owner that was buying fuel from us. But when he went to the bank, the teller said to him, "Do you realize this is the first money ever to be paid into this account?"
Ooh, okay.
And
that could unsettle you a little bit.
Prior to that, we'd done some work establishing a logo for Gulfstream, a little write-up, bought some stationery at CNA and printed some things, had some flyers, had a little website. So I think the customer thought we were established to some degree. We didn't lie, but they also didn't ask how new we were.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand we were brand new. so when the teller at the bank said, and in those days, the guys were paying in at the teller, said, "This is the first money ever to hit this bank, or will be the first money ever to hit this bank account." He walked straight out of the bank and called me. And he just said to me, "Shane, this is all the money that I have. Do you realize that if I pay you this money and I don't get a load of fuel, that closes my business?" And I said, no, I guarantee you will get your delivery.
Yeah.
I felt like saying, "Please pay me and just give me a chance, you'll see." I said, "Don't worry, I guarantee you'll get your delivery." And he said, "Look, I'm just telling you, this is the situation. I'm trusting in you. I'm believing in you. I'm going to pay." And I was relieved. I thought, okay, just pay. It's fine. Everything, we'll work out the rest. And he went in, to cut the long story short, and he paid. And then everything went wrong with that delivery. Oof. And he called, and eventually I had to get up in the middle of the night and escort the truck to the site to get the load delivered. And the guy was, let's just put it this way, he was, I'll say his name, Govan. He was hugely relieved that he got his delivery in the end. Yeah. And that was the start of a lot more deliveries. And, when we sold that first load, we thought if we could do this 10 times a day, it would be fantastic. 20 times a day, it would be fantastic. And there was a point in our history, not long after we started, a few years later, where we did it 100 times, more than 100 times in a day. So, that's a bit of background.
Yeah, sure. It's a big responsibility. I mean, one has to stay cool. You're taking on this responsibility of supplying fuel, So how do you select the characters for something like this? I find that very difficult personally. Just recruiting and finding the right characters to back this process.
So we have clearly had some fun times at Gulfstream, particularly I think in our interactions with customers. But it hasn't always gone well. We came through a very difficult time in COVID. I'm sure you'll remember, a few years ago now. But I think the impact of that still lingers on. And then, I think I want to go back to you. We invested quite heavily in this business that we call Power On. To some degree, we were dependent on load shedding, which just disappeared in March last year. Some of us thought it was because elections were pending, but it just never really came back. And I wanted to just get your take in terms of what happened there and what was the impact of all of that.
Yeah, of course. Shane, it's as I said earlier, we grew something that was generating thousands of transactions a month, and as you said, it just disappeared. It went from 1,000 transactions or thousands of transactions to pretty much zero in the space of 2 weeks. And suddenly you've built a business on the back of that. I think just to be clear, it was never the intention to build a business that solely focuses on or that's solely reliant on load shedding.
Okay.
Right? So I think we have to put that out there.
But what was the intention?
The intention was to use that as a springboard. So,
Okay.
To build something and take advantage of that situation, to enable us to build a business that has other offerings, specialized commodities and services. But the load shedding and the diesel delivery into the generators was really the kickstart that got us going there. But we didn't think it would disappear that quickly. So, suddenly...
How long did you think it was going to be around for?
Look,
how long did you think?
Look, I thought at least another 2 years. The estimations, we looked at some data, and the estimations were at least another 2 years before things started getting better.
Would that then have given you enough runway?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. A lot of the other offerings were already in the works. There was already, we had started with some of the other offerings, so that was there. But the rapidness of how it just disappeared put us in a very, very difficult position. And not only us as a company, we had delivery partners all over the country that were basically SMMEs that were dependent on the business that we provided and the deliveries that they did and the income they generated from that.
These are the guys with the buckies stationed across South Africa in different towns.
Correct.
That pull the specialized fuel trailers.
That's exactly it.
For the smaller deliveries.
That's exactly it. So they basically were our distribution network, if you could put it in simple terms. And, their income was just gone overnight. So, it wasn't just us as a company that it affected a lot of the network. For the country, no load shedding, obviously a good thing. But for us as a business, it hurt. And, we had to almost immediately think of, okay, what do we do? Do we wait this out? Is it coming back? Is it not coming back? And, we kind of sat it out for a few months. And then we realized, wait, but this seems like it's gone, and it's gone for extended periods of time. So what do we do here? Do we just close down this one section and try and focus on the others? And we said, no, wait, maybe there's a different angle to this. There's still power cuts. There's still a need for rapid delivery of small quantities or smaller quantities of diesel into generators and the like. And we then said, okay, what's the best way of doing this? So what do we do that still provides business continuity to the companies we service? And, those are some of the biggest telecoms companies in the country, the biggest retailers, hospital groups. What do we do there that's a win-win for both of us? And we then came up with a subscription model. So we basically said, well, we'll keep the service on call pretty much 24/7 across the country. But in exchange for that, we need you to please pay us a subscription, a monthly fee, which we were successful with. So, a lot of companies saw the need for the service that we were offering.
It's like business continuity insurance.
Exactly. That's pretty much what it is. Of course, the quantities in which they needed it and the urgency in which they needed it had significantly decreased, but there was still a need for it. And I think, today there is still a need for it. There's always a need for rapid responses when you need it. And we managed to convert a lot of the the big customers into these subscription customers that we call and charge a retainer of sorts. And that's kind of kept that business going and kept that business alive. And, we've actually seen that business grow. So, we've been able to take on more sites, we've been able to service bigger regions. But ultimately, that's kind of what we did to maneuver out of that while developing the rest of the stuff at a rate of knots. We then had to go all out and get the other offerings, which, we know as Power On Road, which is an on-road refueling system, Power On Marine, which is a marine refueling platform, and then also Power On Gas, which is a gas, an LPG delivery service as well. So, those were the things that came out of that, and we had to do that a lot quicker than we wanted to. And it's something you don't think of when you're in the moment of everything going so well, but then you suddenly need to do it and you have to move quickly. And I think that's the most important thing that's come out of it. If you need to change quickly and make sure you change and do the right things at the right time. But from that we've built a suite of products now. That's a gain on the up, right? So that's been interesting. But it came from a very difficult place at some point. So
and it didn't come without financial strain to the business.
Of course. Yeah.
What was the journey like for you? I mean, Govan, you experienced some of the pain as well on the bulk side, sort of over the course of the last year or so. I mean, things are looking up now. We are certainly having a better year this year than last year. But what was that journey like?
I think, from a personal perspective, you scratch your head. But the most important thing that you learn from that is who you surround yourself with in times of adversity when it hits you. So that was the cool part for me. It's like, listen, here's a mission. We know what we can do. You need to believe in yourself. You need people around you that can believe in themselves and the organization's ability to counter. And we've certainly on the bulk side deployed that. So we looked at the Agri sector and we were like, hey, why are we not playing here? This has traditionally been supplied by oil majors. We're an independent. We built here. We're South African. This is South African soil. Why are we not playing here? And some of these Agris, because of the exponential reputation and growth that we had, they looked at us and we could lead with our reputation. And they gave us another dynamic opportunity to play there, take bulk fuel, perhaps plug in the mini bulk offerings, provide some infrastructure resources to them to cater for a shift where we've seen where these Agri guys are like, listen, this has been 40 or 50 years traditionally that we've been supplied by world majors, but our farming sector or our agricultural sector is changing. You get guys looking at their crops with drones and technology and things that's coming in there. And because we are so agile and we've got these offers, it's a perfect fit. It was like hand in glove, and we were like, we can do this. And almost off the bat, like major Agris gave us an opportunity to play. And we're servicing them diligently with that type of care. And we saw exponential growth quickly. So, but it's because we were surrounded by the right attitudes. And I think that was the key in unlocking that. Same in the marine sector. We're refueling massive vessels that's carrying containers and all sorts of things. And that's certainly sectors that we'll continue to stack on and grow on outside of our traditional sectors that we had. But the key thing is when that adversity comes about, it puts pressure on you to look at things differently. And that you need some creative minds around you to believe in something. If you don't, when adversity hits, when some things come your way, you can go and sit in a corner and you don't have answers. And that certainly happened in my personal life before, but this time around it was like, I can back those guys and these women and ladies, youngsters, that we can do this. And that's the special part. And I think after that adversity, now you can stack on like, listen here, we've learned our lessons because you were in business. All big and small organizations learn lessons, sometimes the hard way. How you counter that, and Amin mentioned a good point on how quickly you come to the realization that, listen here, this is not going to happen. I need to do something with this collective of people to change this and believe in having the ability to do that. So marine and agri both, we're growing there aggressively. And again, it's a sector that we haven't unlocked until I think 12, 18 months ago, So it was always there, we never saw it, but bad things make you look at things differently. So,
I've learned about
happy.
so many great companies that have had to go through really difficult periods in order to then become great. Sometimes change change strategy. At some point, I thought it's actually a requirement.
yeah, it is.
It's a requirement to. One thing that is true is it's a requirement to learn big lessons in order to become great.
Yeah.
And big lessons you can't learn out of a textbook. You have to learn it in reality. So I'm hoping last year was a nice lesson for us. I think we all learned a lot from that. I think we've taken a lot of that learnings and put it into this year, which is obviously a much better year for Gulfstream. And now we got things to look forward to, including what you were saying there, Govan, on the agricultural side and the marine side. If I can ask you, maybe almost in conclusion, what are you guys seeing going forward? Considering where we are now, where we've come from, what are you seeing in the next year, 2 or 3 for Gulfstream? And what are your focus areas as chief operating officers going to be?
So Shane, on the power on suite of products, we building something here to take over. We're building the best specialized tech-driven service or center where we see exponential growth. We see our gas business growing. We see that being almost a household name at service stations. We see our on-road network becoming one of the best, if not the best, in the country. The marine offering, I think it's the first of its kind. We out here to build a name and to build an offering that's going to stick around. I think a lot longer than some of us here might be.
Only in South Africa?
Definitely not, Shane. South Africa's home. That's where we start. But we're going to go cross-border at some stage.
But only when we get it right here.
Only when we get it right here. We start here, we grow it, but that's it. I think number one is the only thing we're going for.
Govan?
Yeah, I think we have got these parallel business units that move, and they're so different. But I think on the bulk side, for us, we had a vision to be the number one independent oil company in South Africa. And I think if you look at the story, and the visionaries behind this business, I think it comes together in the next 2 to 3 years. Continuing to build in retail, continuing to build on the agricultural space, having these big blue chip companies look at us as a shop window on the bulk side, somebody that can be agile, somebody that can source from various points. We've got that strategy figured out. So continuing to build on that, I think our vision comes together in the next 2 to 3 years, where you've got this agile power on business and the bulk business kind of stacking and boxing against major international oil companies, and that has been brewed locally. So I think it comes together in the next 2 to 3 years, given the experiences, the lessons, and I think the team of people we have behind us, and understanding that, you need to invest in technology, you need to acclimatize to change and do things differently versus your competitors. And the odd thing is your competitors are also your friends at the same time, and seeing how they move those organizations and how climate has changed. But in the next 2 to 3 years, I think it comes together on all sectors in Gulfstream, continually quality customers. Everybody that wants diesel is not a Gulfstream customer. So it's selecting a specific customer base, which we've managed to do fantastically over the last couple of months and perhaps years ahead, and retaining that and giving him the best experience. I always say we're not selling trips to the moon. We're selling a commodity that people are not always excited about buying.
Most people, they actually don't want to buy it.
So
they have to buy it. It's important for their businesses.
Indeed.
You'd rather buy something else if you had a choice.
You must make that experience as seamless as possible for your customer base, regardless of the sector. And find a solution. Go and sit with them around a fire in a boardroom and be like, listen, what are your requirements here? How do we help you achieve that? And I think the power on business speaks to that. When these big corporates were like, listen, we need 1,000 generators refueled in the next week. How do we do this? And we put up our hands and said, listen, we can help you with this. The same on the bulk side. In the agri space, we can help you with this. You've got variability. If you have big locations or ranges that you need to cover, we can get fuel to that site safely at the most competitive or at a competitive price. And then come and help you figure things out when it comes to strategic fuel procurement for your business requirements, regardless of the sector. And I think our lessons, both on the power on and on the Gulfstream side, over the past couple of years, starting with COVID and post that period when load shedding stopping, I think those experiences coming together in the next 2-3 years, we will be a force to be reckoned with, without a doubt, just because of attitude and because of what the foundation of this business has been built on. So we've got a weapon, and we're certainly going out there and doing something with that in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think the industry is excited about it. I'm excited about it.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, this is episode 1.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to interviewing some key figures from some of those industries and from some of those blue chip companies, as we progress. Somebody, I think, once quite aptly said, Gulfstream customers are probably Gulfstream's best kept secret.
Yeah.
So we're going to expose our audience to some of those very interesting characters as we journey. Now, I have something over here that you guys know. You guys know what this is.
Very well.
It's a bell, and it's quite a revered item in the Gulfstream organization, because this bell only gets rung when something really special happens in the organization. And I think something special has happened today. We've had an opportunity to do something different. I think it's really the first time for all of us. And of course, our podcast is called Show and Tell, and maybe ring the bell. I don't know. But gentlemen, thank you for Ameen Kiefer, Govan Jegels. Thank you for being part of the first episode of Show and Tell. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to ring the legendary Gulfstream bell.
I'll definitely start. I know this one. This is if you reach a pinnacle. So I'll start.
I will gladly take this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.